So today we'll spend good amount of time understanding what is DevOps and what are the benefits of having DevOps kind of mindset. This is again a typical scenario where as a developer you develop a code or set of applications and you send out the artifacts based on whatever requirements that you had from customers, and then you try to deploy to production. Operations team, they try to manually hack the script received from development team and changes the config files to reflect the changes in production, which could potentially lead to an issue. As I said earlier, most of the time the changes can lead to a problem or issue, and especially when you do not have really good visibility into what got changed, and then you're simply applying some short fix and shortcuts to deploy the change. That can potentially lead to a problem. So what is missing, if you try to understand here, is these two teams, although they are part of the same company, kind of part of the same org, but they do not work together. Both of them, they work in kind of siloed environment, and that is why DevOps is needed. So let's again talk about it. Some of the other problems. In this case, developer gave faulty artifacts. On the left hand side here it is operations. On the right hand side, development, all the artifacts were fine. The error is because of some other issue. So there is some issue. If you see the end result, it talks about 404, which is nothing but page not found. Now when we try to debug and try to find the problem, developer says that all the artifacts are fine from my side, there are no problems, but QA was given wrong setup, so they could not test it properly, and now we have this problem in production. That's not my problem. Now when being in operations, you try to debug, and then you realize that developer actually gave the faulty artifact, and that created this problem, and now our customers are facing problem where our customers are saying 404, which is not a good experience, right? What finally they did, they decided to roll back, see, in this case again, developer finally realized that the correct DB was not deployed. So after the deployment, QA sees more anomalies and raises defects. And actually in this case, what happened, since you cannot troubleshoot and try to fix the problem in production, typical situation is you roll back the change, because production is not the place where you actually try to troubleshoot it and fix it. Ideally, all this testing, fixing should have been done in pre-prod environment before you go to production. Once you go to production, you're 100% sure that yes, it is going to work. But worst case, if it doesn't work, the ideal situation is you roll back the change, because production is not the place to troubleshoot and fix the issue, unless there are some limitations where you cannot go back. But in most of the case, production, you do not again make any changes there. Okay, so if you see in this case, since dev and ops team, they did not work together, finally we lost a lot of time and energy, because it was more of a blame game that I did my part, someone did not do their part and all that. Finally, if you see, for customers, they're not bothered. I mean, whose fault is? If it is like dev, QA, or ops, it's not working for me as an end user. So in this case, as I said, it was decided that roll back the changes. So now let's talk about what is the solution, right? The solution is DevOps. We need to have DevOps mindset. Now, as I said earlier, DevOps is nothing but it's a mindset that dev and ops, or dev, QA, and ops, we need to work together. We need to understand each other better, to understand why dev is working on a particular problem or trying to develop an issue, and at the same time, ops should understand, and dev should understand what is how ops work, how we deploy the code to production. So there is a question about the duration of this webinar. Sandeep, it is going to be 1 hour, so it's going to be till 10:30 IST. Another question, will we be having access to these PPTs after the session as well? I'm hoping yes, but you can send an email to support@edureka.co, and they should be able to provide you the PPT. But I'm assuming that you should have access to this one. Okay, so Raju is asking, can you please give a live example of DevOps? Okay, so Raju, we just talked about that, a scenario where the changes were made and were deployed to production. After the change or the application got deployed to production, customers were seeing 404 errors. And now, what happened after that? We were trying to figure out, what happened, why, the proper code was not deployed. And then we realized that, Dev, QA, and Ops were not in sync. Dev thought that it will work in production. QA thought that I did my part. And finally, when it got deployed to production, it failed, right? So if you try to understand the flow, the current flow, if you do not have DevOps mindset, it's nothing but it's more of a transactional. Everyone is working on just their problem and not trying to understand the big picture. DevOps is nothing but, again, trying to understand the big picture. Then if you try to understand the big picture that, yes, this application needs to get deployed to production, and not just deployed to production, that's not just my only responsibility. My responsibility is to ensure that the customers are able to use the application. If that is not working for some reason, that means we do not have DevOps mindset, right? In ideal situation, when you develop a code, it should be properly tested. Ops should have really good visibility of what kind of changes we are making, what kind of application that we are developing, what kind of capacity that we need to have. At the same time, Dev or QA also needs to understand how Ops functions, or how, what kind of capacity model that we have, whether the application that I'm developing is going to successfully work in production or not, these kind of things. Okay, let's understand this particular slide. Again, this slide talks about, why DevOps is a solution, right? So if you try to understand what this particular slide says, let me read it out for you. It says, instead of seeing these two groups as silos who pass things along but do not really work together, I think we talked about it just now, DevOps recognizes the interdependency of software development and IT operations and helps an organization to produce software and IT services more rapidly with frequent iterations. Now, again, think about today's situation where changes are really frequent. Gone are the days where we used to have monthly or every 2 months release cycle. In today's world, we make frequent changes, right? In fact, I have seen in many software development organizations, there is a demand that, can I release my code whenever I feel like doing it? I just developed something and I want to release that code to production, and I want to quickly get my customers' feedback, and I do that now. Now, if you do not have DevOps mindset in your organization, you cannot do that, because if you have to have a kind of very strict process that, okay, once the application is developed, you have to have testing for 7 days, and then you have to go through different life cycles, and finally it gets deployed to production. It cannot work. That means we need to bring in the DevOps mindset. We need to bring in a lot of automation, so that the moment you make some changes, the moment you develop something new, you should be able to quickly test and have an automated test instead of doing it manually, right? And then based on that automation, in automated test results, you should be able to deploy it automatically, and not like you have to depend on someone. So this is what the current need is, and this is why we are talking about DevOps and why DevOps is needed. Okay, so there is a question that to become a DevOps, what kind of skill set is needed? So I have a slide on that. Give me another few minutes and I'll share that. But it's not very different than what you have as even in IT operations. But to become a successful DevOps engineer, today's thinking is, of course, you need to know the latest tools and technologies, but more than that, you need to have a kind of mindset that how do we enable, the software development organization to, make quicker releases, quicker changes. Can you give any workspace with live example for try ourselves? So, Muralidharan, give me some more time. As I said, I'm planning to give a demo on Puppet and how you can use Puppet and what are the benefits, especially in today's world, why it is needed. So I'll spend some time on that. Okay, again, a lot of questions on scripts, like is scripting knowledge is mandatory to be a successful DevOps? Just to answer your question, yes, but we will talk about, DevOps skills. I have a separate slide for that. Okay, let's move on. Okay, this is the next slide. You asked and we have it. So these are the DevOps skills. And this is again not limited that you need to have only these skills. There are again a lot of things that you need to, but if you have these skills, it definitely helps a lot. And that means today's world, the demand is about, the automation, quick deployment and all that. If you have these kind of skills, it really helps, and you will be able to make a successful DevOps organization in your company. DevOps tools, so ability to administer and customize them, right? So it's like a typical sysadmin tool or the skill set that you need to have, right? Second is scripting and automation skills. Very important today's world. I think someone had a question whether scripting knowledge is mandatory. I wouldn't say mandatory, but if you do not have it, you will face a lot of problem. Or in the sense, think about a situation where you have to say remove, not remove. Let me give another example where you have to say add web servers dynamically. You are say handling an e-commerce site, say Flipkart, right? And what you want to develop a capability that if Flipkart, marketing team decides to give a full page ad in say Hindu newspaper tomorrow, I should have a kind of infrastructure where it should be able to scale up based on the demand that we have on a particular day, on a particular hour. Now, can you do it manually? Can you wait for your server to hang or crash and then add some capacity? You cannot. You cannot afford to do that. Now, the way you can do it is you have to automate. You have to have scripting knowledge. You need to have some kind of the tools, technologies, and all that ready. And with the combination of all of this, you will be able to achieve. As I said, I wouldn't say it is mandatory, but thinking about today's situation based on again what you're handling, I would say that if you're again say handling this kind of situation where the change is only constant, where you have changes coming in all the time, that means the change in demand, change in frequency and of release and all that. That means you need to have a lot of automation and scripting knowledge. So there is a question as an Oracle DBA, how it will help. Any skill within operations, if you again think about, just think about Oracle. Let's again think about Flipkart situation, where you on a particular day you get a lot of requests, lot of hits, and you are a DBA, you are just handling the database part. Just imagine that on a normal day, suppose you get 100,000 requests, right? 1 lakh requests. On that particular day, you suddenly get 10 lakhs requests. So that means your number of requests has gone up by 10x. Now, as a DBA, of course, you cannot scale up immediately. You need to have again some kind of automation in place. Again, maybe you should be able to spin up new Oracle instances. You should be able to add capacity to the existing Oracle database, and at the same time ensuring that how can you ensure that the moment you add a new database server, your application is capable enough to dynamically start using the new database service that you add, right? So again, thinking about the end-to-end, like it's not just at any particular layer, like either web layer, app server layer or database layer. But think about a situation, end to end, and see, even if you're a DBA, even if you're a sysadmin, in today's world, you have to think about automation. You have to think about, quick changes, quick releases, right? Another question is, does Docker come under DevOps tool? I would say yes. I mean, see, all these latest tools and technologies definitely helps you achieve the same result or better result quickly, right? Because again, what is Docker basically? Just to give you a quick intro, Docker is nothing but it gives you a container, right? So basically, when you develop an application with the help of Docker, your application can become an image, and that can run on any operating system. So you don't need to worry about what kind of OS I have, what version of OS I'm running. Docker takes care of all that. I mean, it is all just behind the scene. Just about thinking about, say, AWS, the infrastructure that they provide. You do not need to worry about what kind of infra they have, what kind of network they have. You just request and you have servers ready. Okay, a lot of questions on skill set. I may not be able to answer everything because there are a few other things planned, but let me pick up some of the questions that you have. Out of Perl, Python, and Ruby, which language is the best to learn? I see in today's world, Python is becoming very popular, but even if you know Perl, Ruby, that's fine too. I mean, it's any of these language learning others is not very difficult. But again, as I said, Python is more powerful than Perl or Ruby, or at least with Perl compared to Perl. But as I said, any of the coding language that I think that you should be able to achieve what you want to do. Another question, if I have knowledge of MySQL, will it help? Yes. So again, if you're on the database side, no matter what again, think about today's situation. Just knowing MySQL may not be enough. Just knowing, maybe think about, how do I replicate the, MySQL database? How do I scale up the MySQL database quickly and dynamically and all that? Okay, DevOps lifecycle or DevOps cycle, right? Now, in this case, if you see on your left, you have version control system where, as a developer, you check in your code, you manage all your version and everything. You have continuous integration tool. Jenkins is again very popular. I think I have it in one of the slides, which talks about the CI/CD and different tools that you can use. But continuous integration is nothing but integrating all the different piece of code together and then releasing that code. Think about a situation again where, suppose you work for, say, Facebook. Now Facebook, there is a team who just works on, say, maybe like button, right? The other team who just works on maybe just the login function. The third team who works just maybe on photo uploads, right? Now when you release the code, you have to integrate all these three applications. I mean, if you think about, Facebook is maybe one bundle application, but it's like combination of three different applications in the example that I gave you, right? Now you integrate all these three applications into one, and then you deploy it. But before you deploy, you ensure that all the three applications that you have works together. Maybe independently it is working fine, but when you integrate, maybe it is not working. So continuous integration helps you achieve that, kind of integrate all these three applications, test it properly to ensure that, yes, bundling all of this or integrating all these three applications are definitely going to work in production. You ensure that, and then you go to production. So now after you do the continuous integration, then app goes into release automation, which is nothing but continuous deployment, and then it gets deployed to production here. And then it is available for the end user. Now in the background, if you see the bottom side of this particular slide, which talks about primarily the infrastructure automation. So that means your application is ready here, bit what I talked about just a few minutes back, that you need to have some kind of automation in place where the moment you have a spike in traffic, your infrastructure should be able to take that load. Maybe automating some of that part where you dynamically scale your infrastructure up or down, right, based on the number of hits or requests that you get from the user. Again, in the background, you have application management, means there is a team or maybe application or tool who monitors your application, like how our customers are able to use the application, whether the performance is good or not. Again, you have many tools which gives you this kind of visibility, that what is the turnaround time for, say, a login page. If your login page takes 30 seconds, will you use, say, any particular application? No, right? If, say, Google search takes 3 minutes to give you a search result, will you use it? You will not, right? We will try to look for an alternative. Similarly, if you're owning an application, you ensure that it is not just up, but at the same time, the performance is really good and our customers are able to use it. Couple of more questions. So more or less, all Puppet, Salt, Chef, Ansible does config management. Which tool has advantage over other? I would say all are kind of same. Puppet and Chef is more popular, even Salt. So I would say it is up to you to decide which one you want to. All of them gives kind of similar results, and the main objective using these tools are so that you can automate your infrastructure, automate your the configuration management and all that. So it is again up to you which one you want to pick up. I would say all these are latest tools and all gives kind of similar results. Another question is Splunk. So Splunk is, yes, the log aggregation tool which can aggregate your tool into one place, and you can actually have really nice dashboards to give, which can give you really insight about your application performance, the way your users are using your application, the number of hits and all that. You can have really nice dashboard to display all these statistics. Splunk can also alert you in case something goes wrong. If you suddenly see a lot of 500 errors, so you can define the threshold that you say if more than 10% of 500 errors, you want to get notified. So it can send you an email, or you can even set up PagerDuty, which can send you SMS, or it can even call your cell phone. So question, what is the difference between Puppet, Salt, Chef, and Ansible? As I said, these are all config management tools, and everyone, all these tools are really good, latest. So this is, as I said, primarily for automating your infrastructure and managing your config. Okay, moving on to the next one. So DevOps lifecycle. The first one talks about provisioning, where first you provision all the hardware. So here, if you see all databases, the second layer or the middle layer is nothing but your web server, app server, and the top one could be either your load balancer or web server. Okay, the second column talks about after you provision your hardware, you configure it, right? So you configure, in this case, you have load balancers, then you have these web servers, and then you have DB master, which can talk to your DB slave that you have here. So first you provision all the hardware, then you configure the hardware independently, and finally you integrate it so that all of this, the hardware or the infrastructure that you have provisioned, should work together, right? Oops, sorry about that. Where were we? So here, okay. This one talks about DevOps tools. So what are the DevOps tools that we use? I think some of you had question like, what are the different tools that we use today? There is a question, can you provide the installation steps? So I can maybe give you a couple of URLs that I refer, or I suggest that you can go through to install Puppet, but it's a fairly straightforward. It doesn't take a lot of time to configure, to install and configure. The one that I'm going to give, show you the demo. I already have Puppet installed, and I can, I'm going to show you how you can use Puppet, but I can give you the, couple of URLs which you can use to install and configure your Puppet. Can Jenkins be used for deployment of applications? Yes. So Varun, for CI and CD, Jenkins is very popular. If you see here, this slide talks about that Jenkins is the most popular tool to achieve CI/CD. Of course, you have SVN, Git, Perforce, and all that for more of a repository management system. But yes, Jenkins is very popular today. Some of the DevOps tools on this particular slide: infrastructure automation, you have Cobbler, Foreman, Crowbar, and all that. You have config management, we talked about Puppet, Salt, and Chef. CI and CD, we talked about Jenkins primarily. Monitoring, we have, again, a lot of tools, but Nagios has been around for many years and very popular. Again, a few more questions coming in. What are the prerequisites? So I can, as I said, I can, share you a couple of URLs which gives you what are the prerequisites to install Puppet. But on Linux, it's, as I said, very, very straightforward. You just need to run a few commands and you're done. Is Puppet licensed or open source? It's an open source. You don't need to pay for Puppet. What is the difference between CI and CD? Very good question, Satyam. Glad that you asked. So CI and CD, CI is continuous integration. I think I briefly talked about that. When you say, when you have say Facebook, suppose you are working for Facebook and you have 3 teams. First team is working on developing login application. The second team is working on developing, say, photo uploads. The third team is, say, working on the like button that you see. When you go and try to bundle the application into one as Facebook application, you integrate all of this. You ensure that you have automated test, and everything. So that is called CI. That means as a developer, you check in the code into SVN or Git, and from dev to QA, you want to get it promoted. So you use Jenkins to actually do the integration and deployment to next level. By doing all the automated tests, I mean, all 3 applications got integrated, became Facebook application, and you test it whether everything is working fine or not. And then you do all the load tests, performance tests, your feature test and all that. That is called CI. CD is nothing but continuous deployment or even delivery. So that means you develop your infrastructure or setup in such a way that as a developer, I develop something, I check in, and it is available in production in just few minutes. After, of course, all the testing and everything, all automated testing and everything. And I have a dashboard where I can go and see, like, what are the different test cases that it ran and whether it passed or not. And of course, if it got passed, so that means now it is available in production. So Jenkins, and there are many other tools which gives you that capability, but Jenkins is very popular, which helps you achieve CI and CD. So could you give an example on infrastructure automation and CI and CD? So infrastructure automation, I'm going to talk about. CI and CD, I just gave an example. Infrastructure automation is primarily for, say, Puppet or Salt or Chef that you use to ensure that you add infrastructure dynamically, and then you configure your infrastructure in such a way that if it is for, say, web server gets installed, configured, and ready for use. If it is, say, app server, again, all the configuration is done and then, gets added to the pool, and same with the database as well. So, Sabarinathan, I did not quite understand your question, that if you have idea, knowledge on all of these, can I call myself as software configuration manager? Can you be a little more specific, which area you want to get clarity on? Just going through some of the questions. Okay. So test cases, Manish, you had a question about test cases. So yes, all the different test cases that you can think of, right? So think about a situation, as I said, the 3 examples that I gave about Facebook. Think about a situation like, if you had to manually test it, what are the different test cases that you will write, right? Correct? And once you have, say, automation, you basically automate that so that your tool can test all that and you don't have to manually do it. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Some of the other DevOps tools. So revision control system, Git, CVS, or Subversion. Subversion is known as SVN as well. Software configuration management. So Perforce is again very, very popular. Virtualization, the hypervisor like vCenter, Hyper-V, and all that. Okay, moving on to the next one, DevOps roles. So these are the different roles that we have within DevOps. I think we talked about it even earlier, that we have integration engineer, which integrates the Facebook example that I gave, different application into one. The cloud specialist, like if you have, say, your application hosted in cloud, say for example AWS, you need to have people who really understand how infrastructure works in a cloud environment. Of course, automation and release engineer, I think most of you are aware what are these. So these are some of the roles. And of course, we talked about DBAs, network engineers, system engineers, and all that. Of course, they're part of DevOps. So can I be a DevOps administrator rather than a DevOps developer? And again, Ajaz, I'm not too sure about the question that you have. If you're just asking about title, I don't think it matters much. DevOps, as I said, it's nothing but a mindset that you are a, say, system admin or system engineer, and you work with dev team, understand their world, dev team understands your world. That is what DevOps is, right? Okay, moving on to the next one. Here are the DevOps challenges that we have. I think we have been talking about it, that it's a cultural mindset, as how the typical mindset of people could be taken off, that no, I am a dev, I do not want to know about how ops work and how my application works in production. Or I'm an operations, I do not want to know how development or a particular application is being developed. So it's a kind of cultural mindset, and it's a transition from being a traditional IT organization or product company to more of a DevOps kind of mindset. It's a transition from traditional, from doing a traditional way to DevOps way. As I said, DevOps is not a technical problem, it's a business problem in today's world, where everyone is really engaged and they want to know what's going on. Think about a situation like when Facebook is down. It's typically DevOps team who handles that. Will the CEO of Facebook be happy? He will not be, right? He will definitely would be interested, what's going on, how quickly can we restore, how do we ensure that it doesn't happen again, and so on. The last point, DevOps is not just about having the latest tools. You may have latest tools, but if you do not use it properly, or if you're not using it at all, you definitely do not have the DevOps, right? And as I said, DevOps is more of a mindset than just having a lot of tools.